But once you've gotten past that part, you can say, listen, Mrs. Prospect, before we even get started after down this agenda and before you start, like there's one problem that I wanted to address before we go any further. She said, one of the problems I wanted to address before we go further, Jane or Mrs. Prospect, is that we don't actually provide local in-person service. And before we even go any further down any path, is that going to be a problem for you? And then you just sit there and you wait. And what's going to happen is, if it's a big problem and if it's a deal breaker right off the bat, the prospect's going to come back and say yes. And then your immediate response is you turn around and say, you start, can you share more? What do you mean? And then you play dumb. And then you just listen to them as they start to talk about why in-person service is such a big deal, or why fill in the blank is such a big problem for them and they won't be able to get over it. What you'll identify out of this part of the conversation is, yeah, it's not the right timing. You need to go back and develop product, or there is a bridge of the both of you can cross to get to a place where you can avoid this particular pitfall or this particular skeleton. And so again, the idea is get in the sales conversation, make sure you bond and connect with them, set the rules of the agenda for the call so you have that. We call it the rules of the game. And then get in there and say, look, before we actually even get started, there's just one thing that I've been thinking about and it's on my mind and I just want to address it before we go any further, Mrs. Prospect. We don't do this, or we don't have this, or this isn't actually a piece of our offering and I don't know if that's important to you, but is that going to be a problem? And you can start the conversation off that way, and it starts on kind of a negative part of the call, and prospects love that because the only way you can go from negative is to go back to positive.